And he's wearing a Flo Bro shirt. Anne's across the table from me.
Anne, I just bought that book.
That's what she said. I just saw the email. Just so you know, there's a first one too. It's called You Are a Badass. So if you haven't read her stuff, you have to.
So do I have to read the first one first? What happens if I already know I'm a badass? Can I skip right to the second one or no?
Yeah.
I can.
I love them. So this is the second time I've listened to the Money one audiobook, and I read You Are a Badass on vacation last August, and I'm listening to the audiobook.
So is it a businessy book, or is it more like self-help, or a bit of both, I guess?
Self-help.
All right, I'm gonna definitely read it, and then maybe we could have like a chat about it. You know? Wait, now I can't hear you that well.
I just keep re-listening to them.
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear you. So she has a whole series of them, huh?
Yeah, if you look up, I think it's her website's youareabadass.com.
Okay.
She's awesome.
All right, yeah. I'm gonna digest.
Cool. Excellent.
Great title, by the way. It's a great title.
I know. Awesome. Well, I'll let you get into it.
Right, nice seeing you. Hey, Claire.
Can I take a screenshot?
You're right in frame. Everything looks really good.
Okay.
Thank you so much for carving out some time to do this. I know you are probably super swamped of doing lots of things.
Yeah. So we just got into Techstars, New York City. So we're moving to New York for a period of time. We are finishing up our fundraise. So that is crazy and exciting. Yeah. So we're in the midst of a mess, but it's good.
What? You have to move to New York?
Yeah. So Techstars, are you familiar with the Techstars program?
I am, but I didn't know you had to move to New York.
So there's different Techstars programs all across the world, and we got into the one in New York City. So it's a 3-month accelerator program in New York.
How do you even get into that?
I'm sorry?
How did you even get into that?
We applied, and this is actually like my second or third time applying to Techstars. And this year, like we sent in all of our information online, and then we finally got an interview, and then we got in.
I hear it's pretty competitive.
Yeah. The New York program, I guess, is the highest performing portfolio out of all of the Techstars programs. And it has like a 4 to 7% acceptance rate every year.
God. So what did you do? What did you do different to get in?
Well, we switched to the business to business model. Yeah. And we had some traction there. Yeah. So like, I mean, previously we only had traction in the consumer space, and then we were talking about business to business, but we had no traction at that point. So now, thankfully, we have traction, and
And you are now speaking at events, telling people your story of how you're growing your business. Is that amazing or what?
It's crazy. It's really exciting. And Josh, I get paid to do it. It compensates my salary.
Isn't that even better?
Yeah.
It must be very fulfilling though too, compensation aside.
Oh yeah. No, speaking is my favorite thing. I love speaking, and I love listening, and I love just like talking and having conversation. So I recognize that at one point I was spending like so much time speaking that I wasn't working on the business, but
that's why you have Anne. Anne does all that stuff. That's no problem.
Right. Right.
So when you go to speak at these events, is it mostly like a panel, or do you prepare a presentation, or what's the nature of it?
So first of all, I cannot thank you enough for the introduction to Elena. She's amazing. She actually connected me to like a women's speaker bureau thingy-majig. And that gave me some ideas on where to like apply to become a speaker at different events. But like, for example, I'm speaking at the Women in Automotive Conference in Florida. We did like a partnership with Ask Patty, which is huge in the automotive industry, and we're diving into the automotive industry, yada, yada. But anyway, I'm speaking at that conference, and I'm talking about like tune up your sales with Generation Z. So like I'm a Gen Z, and I'm talking about how they can connect to Gen Zers. And of course, one of the ways they can connect is having their bathrooms offer free tampons and pads. So like, I just have to be a little bit creative depending on where I'm speaking.
So where in Florida are you going to be?
Josh, we literally, it's like an hour outside of Orlando, because don't get me wrong, we looked up where you live to see if we could crash at your house, but
we have my wife and I have plenty of bedrooms. You guys are, but it's pretty far. It's about a 3-hour drive.
Yeah.
How long are you? Whereabouts? So it's near Orlando.
Yes, it is. Hold on.
45 minutes southwest.
45 minutes south.
Southwest, I think.
So that's probably like Fort Myers.
Hold on. I'm pulling it up.
When are you speaking? Do you know what month?
June. Yes. So the conference is June 24th through the 26th, and we're going to be in town June 23rd through the 27th.
That is so exciting.
I know.
So you're speaking to a company?
So this is like it's called Maitland. Are you familiar with Maitland, Florida?
No.
Oh, I'm not either. So, but
It's just a big conference.
Yeah.
Center.
That's where it is.
But it's a company, or it's a conference with lots of different...
Yeah, so it's a conference with lots of different people. I think they have like 5 or it's Championsgate, Florida.
Okay, I've heard
Does
of
that
that.
sound familiar?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, so there's like 500 to 1,000 different automotive
Oh my God.
companies represented, ranging from like dealerships to like, parts companies to like Cox Automotive to Toyota, and like all these different like automotive things. And they're all there because they recognize that selling to women in the car industry is just very different than selling to men. So yeah.
Fascinating. So your angle is to be able to create a better experience in the dealership.
Yes. Yeah.
God, that's fascinating to me. What a great fit for you, your talk, and your product, ultimately.
Yeah. So we're really excited about it. I mean, we did this partnership with Ask Patty, and it's been interesting. Like we didn't know anything about the automotive industry, but the only reason that we got into it was because Ask Patty is literally an organization that certifies dealerships to help them sell better to women. So like she has so she has a certificate. Josh, if you ever want to connect, if you ever want to connect to another really cool badass that knows how to sell, like this woman sells memberships, and it's like a series on how to sell to women.
Fascinating.
Let
me ask you a question. Is it different selling to women than it is men? I guess maybe your point is it is different.
Well, so I think notoriously the automotive industry has been very male dominated, and there are a lot of like the whole shady car salesman, they have that unfortunate stereotype.
Yes.
And typically, like if you're sitting down with a male and female, like the salesperson will only talk to the man. So like, how do you make sure you're engaging the woman and like focusing on the parts of the car that she really cares about? So maybe it's like she has kids and she's a mom and she needs sliding doors and she needs child.
Or maybe she likes fucking horsepower. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I mean, yes. So a lot of like responding to like what a customer actually says, but a lot of just like teaching people just general like courtesies on how to like recognize that women are actually decision makers.
Which is, I guess, to your point, not intuitive for some people.
It's unfortunately not.
Wow.
No.
Wow. So this whole empathy thing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. And so will you prepare this talk, and then there'll be a Q&A?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a 45-minute workshop. So I do a workshop with all of them. I was actually creating it yesterday. I don't really know entirely what I'm doing, but I'm kind of just making it up. I'm like, I'm a Gen Z, therefore I'm an expert. And so I'm just like, well, what I want.
That's the best way to do it.
And I recently purchased a car, so I know the entire process and like why I made the car decision, or like why I decided to go with the dealership that I went with and how it worked. But yeah, so I'm giving them like tips and tricks and how they can increase engagement and yada yada.
Now, it's just closed conference for just these people, or if I were to jet in and sit in the back, they would let me in maybe?
I don't think that they would let you in.
Right. 'Cause I would cheer you on in the back.
I appreciate that so much. I don't think they would let you in though, because it is like a
good
$500 ticket or whatever.
Your business is going well. You're speaking. You're buying cars. It's awesome being you right now.
Well, yeah, but now I'm moving to New York, so the car is now irrelevant. But whatever.
Moving to New York. When are you going to New York?
So our program starts July 16th, And so we are moving probably like the first or second week of July.
And from what I understand, one of the big values of tech is you get access to great mentors.
Yeah. I mean, you're the best mentor, but like
you have some great, I hear you get a lot of network, a lot of connections, right?
Yeah. And then like they have this, so they have 1 week dedicated to having you create like a list of 100 people or companies you want to connect with, and you write them down in an Excel sheet. Fantastic. And then each of the mentors like CC their name if they can send an email introduction. So like,
so great.
Crazy. Just like all of these warm introductions just like makes my skin happy, you know?
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah.
It's the best. Well, awesome. Well, today there's so many things to talk about, but I thought what would be awesome is if we could talk a little bit about how you went from like 0 to like the first 6 figures.
Okay.
And we'll kind of go through that a little bit. We'll tell your story. We'll keep it kind of casual. And I think my audience would really like that. There's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are just starting out and they're trying to figure it all out. And I think your story would be very inspiring to them as well. So we'll get into it, and we'll just keep it casual. Go for however long it goes for, and we'll go. So I'm going to record a couple seconds of silence, and then I prepared a little intro that I wrote just for you, Claire.
Oh,
a lot of love, you know.
Do you have like music to this and everything too?
Yeah, man. I got like podcast, corny podcast music because I guess that's what you have to have.
Oh yeah, good. I just want to make sure.
I'll do that in post. Okay. All right, here we go. I am Josh Braun. This is Inside Selling, a podcast about selling without selling your soul, where I explore how you can make selling more delightful for yourself and your prospects through the simple acts of being curious and just making people feel good when you talk to them. Today, my guest is Claire Coder. She is a 21, or no, maybe you're older than that now. Are you 21 or how old are you now?
I am 21.
21 still. She's been 21 since I've known her. She's a college dropout, entrepreneur, and get this, CEO, but not chief executive officer, chief estrogen officer of AntFlow, who is making headlines in the world of business by changing the world one cycle at a time. Her mission to ensure that everyone has access to menstrual products. Claire, thank you so much for being on the show. I can't wait to talk to you.
Wow, what an intro. That was awesome.
So Claire, take us back. You are in college and you start to want to solve this very unique problem. But how did it all start? How did this come to your head, this idea of saving the world one cycle at a time? Take us back to the genesis.
Well, Josh, I got my period. And that's genuinely the genesis. So I was at university studying at The Ohio State University. While I was there, I was attending an event. I got my period unexpectedly in public without the supplies I needed. I scurried to the bathroom, and of course there was mouthwash and Q-tips and lotion, but not these necessary tampons and pads. Of course, there was a coin-operated machine, but I didn't have a quarter, and it was probably empty or jammed. And that was literally, as I was like wadding up toilet paper and making do with what I had, that was literally the moment where I was like, wow, if toilet paper is offered for free, why aren't tampons and pads?
So you have your period and you think to yourself, this is a problem I want to solve.
Yes.
But you're in school.
Yes. I mean, I was more in school of like hanging out with friends. Like I was really studying fraternity parties.
So the school wasn't really simpatico with you.
No. So school has never really been where I shined. I started my first business when I was 16. It was a quirky promotional products company, but I loved it. And I actually grew it to be a top seller on Etsy. I had independent distributors on the East Coast. I had 25 boutiques selling my product. It was awesome. And that being said, I was like already basically a high school dropout because like I had more important things to do than to like throw spitballs at teachers. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did that too. There's also learning in there, right? I didn't do that. But the classroom setting was never really a place where I thrived and a place that I was interested in. I'm dyslexic, so the ACT was very frustrating for me because I thought that I was, decently smart, but the standardized tests were not reflecting that. And the whole construct was just really frustrating for me. So dropping out was like, a no-brainer for me. I was like, wow, finally an idea that could give me a reason to drop out.
So was that the sort of straw that broke the camel's back? Was that when that happened to you, was that the event that actually caused you to ultimately drop out?
Yeah, so I was at university for just one semester, and that's when I left. And I was already preparing my exodus when I arrived to university. I mean, I went to Ohio State, and don't tell anybody at Ohio State, but I don't like football. It's all about football there. And I just couldn't find my people. So I knew I wanted to start another business, but I wasn't sure what it was. And actually, I was going to leave university to do one of two things: get into real estate, or to start a cookie company. But then, of course, I got my period and I went this direction instead. So I knew that I was going to leave, but I just wasn't sure what idea I was going to work on.
Got it. So you leave college. Your parents are completely supportive.
What a joke.
Not really. They are somewhat supportive. Was that a little anxiety for you? Was that a little difficult?
Yeah. So I'll admit, it was, I was in college fall semester of 2015. So January of 2016 was the first time that I was out of university. This is the first time I wasn't living with my parents. I got an apartment in Columbus, Ohio. But literally when I left university, my parents sat me down and told me that they weren't supportive. They didn't like this decision. They were going to help me grow up by cutting me off of every supportive ounce that they had. So when I left university, I left every support system that I had. I mean, I left my friends at university. My parents weren't supportive. I was jumping into the greater Columbus community, who I had no connections with because I was from Toledo, Ohio. So January of 2016 was a really, really hard time for me because I was alone. I was living off of savings. I had a mediocre marketing job that was really cool, but the work environment sucked. So I had to quickly leave that about 4 to 6 months into it. So I was really lost. So I spent about 2 years squandering until I finally pulled my shit together to start AntFlow.
And your parents weren't bluffing?
No, they weren't bluffing. And in fact, at one point I left the marketing job and I became a waitress. And they were like, wow, Claire, you dropped out of university to become a waitress? I was like, no. I dropped out of university to talk about menstruation, which I'm not sure is any better, but
all right.
Yeah, in the meantime.
So the early days of AntFlow, you now dropped out of school. You don't have a support system. You say, I want to start this company. Take me from the beginning. When is this now? This is early 2016. This is mid 2016. When are we now?
Yeah. So dates. So fall of 2016. So fall of 2016 was when I actually launched what is now known as AntFlow. The first 3 quarters of the year of 2016, I was really preparing and thinking about, how I could pay my rent, but also start a company. And I actually started AntFlow as a subscription box for tampons and pads. It was the lowest cost of entry. I just needed to get some product and start talking about menstruation. And so I actually started a crowdfunding campaign to raise $25,000 to launch this idea. And thankfully, when I was at university, I worked at the OSU call center. So I literally would get on the phone and call alumni that had $100,000 in debt and ask them for more money. And of course, they would hang up on me. So I got really good at getting hung up on. But I also got really good at building rapport and joking with people. And so then when I was raising $25,000 for myself, I felt more comfortable asking people for money for things that they probably don't want to give money to, like a business that's probably going to fail. And so that's actually how I got started with this $25,000 that I raised from like calling people and begging them for money.
How did that go? If you can recall, let's say I'm one. First off, how did you know who to call?
So I made a list of people that I thought had. I made a list of people that I thought that had like, you know, a decent amount of money, like my parents' age. I don't know.
But you didn't know them. These are people that you just found.
No, they were my friend, like distant friends,
Okay.
It wasn't a cold call. They were distant friends. And actually how I started the crowdfunding campaign was I did a event, in this one night event, actually raised $7,000 in just one event. Because I knew I was really, really good at throwing events. So I would call people and invite them to this event. It would cost $50 to get a ticket. No food was served. It was all like $50 for like me. And they would come to this event, and then at the event there was like upsells and things there. So anyway, that one night event raised $7,000, and I was like, okay, great, now what?
Well, let's not gloss over this, because people are thinking $7,000 one night. How did you do that? You called people and said what? Like let's just relive that. Let's say I'm a person and you called me. Let's hear the pitch. Like how would you do it?
Yeah, so some of it was call, some of it was email, some of it was text message. A lot of it was like, hey, I'm starting this business. I'm throwing this event called Menstruation Nation. And it was just quirky and odd enough. It was not a charity event. It was like a quirky event. And don't get me wrong, I put on a show. Like I had my friends' music, like all my musician friends that like I could get them to play for free, and like they would perform, and we had like these outrageous like period puns laying on the table. So it was definitely a shebang. So people like got their money's worth in terms of entertainment, but when they walked in the door, there was like so many opportunities to continue to pay more. So like they could buy a t-shirt, they could get, you know, like typical raffle, like stuff like that. They could buy drinks, and thankfully like the company that was doing drinks like donated all the money back to us. So it was really a wildly successful event because people wanted to buy a ticket for something they hadn't experienced before.
And what did you talk about at a high level? Was it a talk?
So it was a 3-hour event. So it was more of like a go and come kind of thing where people could come in, listen to music, hang out, like engage. But yes, like on the hour, every hour, I would tell them about Flow, what I was working on, and of course, encourage them to buy raffle tickets and things like that. So it was very informal in a sense of like, it wasn't me talking for 3 hours. It was go and come. And in that night, I think we had over 200 people that like showed up.
I must ask, what is a period pun? Can you give me like one example? I don't know what that.
What is a period? I mean, there's just so many, like, you know, I have a shirt that says sharks dedicated a whole week to me. Like, you know, sharks are attracted to blood, and I'm menstruating for a whole week, and like it's a lot, but it's also pretty funny. So so those are like the things that I would
all right. Yeah. So you run this event, and now you have $7,000. This is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. And then nobody else, I called all the people that I knew, and then nobody else wanted to give me more money.
Okay. So how do we get from the 7 to the 25?
Mm-hmm. So this is kind of where I got creative. At one point, are you familiar with Venmo, Josh?
Yes.
Okay.
Claire, even though I'm 50 years old, I know what Venmo is. Okay? Let's, give me a little credit. I'm not a Generation Zer, but.
So I recognize that a lot of the folks that came to my event were not like my age, because it was a $50 ticketed event. There was not many people my age. So I was like, okay, I'm going to send people 1 penny on Venmo. And in the message section of Venmo, I asked them to send money back to support Aunt Flo. And I was like, and I would joke to all the people, like I literally went through, I have got my phone here, I literally went through all of the people that I was connected with on Venmo, and I sent out like tons of pennies. But like at the end of the day, the cost to acquire a customer was like $2 because it was in pennies. And I got money back. Like people were sending me $10 and $20. And so like that got me an extra $3,000 right there. So there it was up to like $10,000.
Claire, this is unbelievably creative. How did you think of that? That's a pretty amazing. Did you just, that just came to you?
So at the time, I think I remember like looking up processing fees. for something. And then I realized that Venmo doesn't have any processing fees. And actually, now that I think about this transaction may have been illegal because for Venmo, you're only supposed to send money to friends and family. And this was kind of for business stuff, but like, don't tell anybody.
No, no one listens to this podcast anyway.
Okay. That's a lie, but whatever. There's probably like
nobody from Venmo is listening to this podcast.
Okay. Well, they were acquired by PayPal, so I'm sure that somebody at PayPal is like, whatever. We aren't going to worry about it. I'm still broke, so don't steal my money. So I was looking at payment processing, and I don't know. I was sending money to a friend one day, and I literally sent him $1. I was like, wow, what if I sent dollars to people and like had them give me money back?
So there's like a law of reciprocity thing happening. Plus, they knew you from the event. They heard you speak, and you went and you raised an extra 3,000. So now we're at about 10,000.
Yeah.
And now, how do we get to 25?
Yeah. So this last 15K, I'm not gonna lie, was really it was a struggle. So when I launched this crowdfunding campaign, it wasn't on Indiegogo or Kickstarter. So we didn't have any organic reach. It was on CrowdRise, which it was just acquired by GoFundMe. But at the time, it was like this startup out of Detroit, Michigan, and like their processing fees were super, super low, but like they didn't have any, followers that were like on CrowdRise funding companies. So this took me like 2 to 3 months to like get this 25K all solidified, whereas Kickstarter can be like 30 days or whatever. But this took me like 2 to 3 months. And so at one point, I literally just like contacted businesses in the community. And that's how I started to engage with businesses. And I said like, hey, do you want to like sponsor this company? And eventually they became like long-term supporters of OntFlow. And I honestly didn't even know what they were sponsoring, but I know that businesses had more money than just like a general like person. And like sometimes they would like want their logo on something just for like $1,000. So
how would you do that? Would you call? Would you email? You created a list? Like, take me through that. Because you $15,000 by asking people to sponsor you, sponsor the company.
Yeah. And I wish I could say I remember everything that I did, but it was really like a case-by-case basis. So like, I grew up in Toledo, Ohio. So I called some of like my mom's friends' businesses that she would like slide me their contact information, and I would reach out to them and be like, hey, I think you're friends with my mom, and yada, yada. None of it was like blatantly cold. Like I always had like a decent warm connection to somebody, whether it be like I attended their gym and so I knew the gym. It wasn't entirely cold at all. Like Josh, honestly, you're like the first time that we've done cold stuff. Like you helped us grow our cold outreach. But before that, it was a lot of like personal connections, and I just like started patching money together. And eventually, like all the people that attended my party, I went back and made a second ask, and they gave a decent amount of money there too. So I patchworked it together to get to that last, to the final 25K.
All right. So now we have $25,000.
Yeah.
Now what do we do?
So I spent all of that money on product. So I took that $25,000, and being a product company, we need to buy inventory. So I bought our boxes, I bought our shipping boxes, I bought our tampons and pads, and I had it shipped all to my 3rd-story apartment in Columbus, Ohio. So here we have a semi-truck rolling down like a side street, delivering, thousands of dollars worth of product, which I had to trek up 3 stairs. It's a startup. It was making things happen. So that was like the start. The people that ended up supporting are like the $25,000. Of course, we shipped them product in exchange for some of their money, and then they became advocates for us, and they shared with their friends and family. And then we actually leaned a lot on media. So we had just like writers reaching out to us who were local that said, hey, can we do like a quick story on you? And I never said no. Like I was like Yes Woman of the Year. Now I say no a little bit more often, but I was Yes Woman of the Year, constantly taking interviews, just getting the name out. Because the more that I talked about menstruation, the more people would feel comfortable talking about menstruation. And the more I talked about OntFlow, the more sales we would get.
And this is, at this point, this is direct to consumer.
Direct to
subscription boxes. And from there we go from how much revenue do we generate doing that?
Yeah. So direct to consumer, at our highest point, we had customers in 47 states. We had a monthly recurring revenue of right around $12 to $15,000 of monthly recurring revenue. And I built that up over a 6-month period of time. So then after that 6-month period of time, it started to dip a little bit, because if you followed the menstrual product industry, at that point, I did take some outside capital. I accepted about $70,000 from an angel investor, and then our biggest competitor raised $13 million. And then we just got cremated from like a business to consumer side, because they would target all of our customers, and there was really no way for us to compete, because they were like, first 2 boxes free, first 3 boxes free, like. And I was just trying to run a profitable business, but it got to the point where I couldn't even get a customer unless I was offering, 6 months free. So the space got really crowded, but thankfully I always knew I wanted to go business to business. So that wasn't really problematic, because at that point I had all of these customers that were ready and willing and eager to support. And I had all of these advocates that wanted to, change it. And I had inventory as well. So it was easier to like jump into this business to business sales.
So is that what you did initially, is you tapped your network and said, hey, you're probably working for a company?
Yeah.
Was that the initial B2B sales? Is that where that came from?
Yeah. So some of it was actually, I recognized that some of our customers were actually businesses purchasing products for their bathrooms already. Like they had a subscription and they were businesses. So we did, by we, I mean me, I did like an analysis of like our current customers to understand who was purchasing product and were they a business? And then I contacted them. And if they were a business, I would like kind of upsell. I would give them this option to get like business pricing, but really it was like actually an upsell. They didn't know that, but whatever. And then I just started converting them into, our business to business sales. And then from our consumer side, we had like in our boxes, thankfully, we would ship them boxes every month. We would share with them, like, do you have a business that you think would be interested in stocking free tampons that respond to this email and get like $5 off your next box. I'll be honest, it kind of worked, but not really, because it was, people just weren't ready to like move or do anything. At that point, we hadn't built that captive of an audience. But what really worked was actually our first business-to-business customer was Harvard University. And this was because we're scrambling right now. Like Lola is like becoming a behemoth, which is great for them, not for us. And I called one of my girlfriends who was involved in student government at Harvard University. And I said, hey, I need you to purchase $5,000 worth of tampons and pads and run a pilot program at Harvard University to offer free tampons and pads on campus. She said, okay, Claire, let's figure this out. Long story short, like a month passes, they pass a budget, and they order $5,000 worth of tampons and pads from me. And Harvard became our first customer. And I don't know anything about like stocking universities. I don't know anything about selling to businesses. I'm just like, I know that it'd be cool to say that Harvard is our first customer. And that was about it. And then that's really how we started to develop this business to business sales strategy. Is thankfully I'm still at the time I was 20. I was still 20. So I knew a bunch of people that were in student government, and I could call them. And that's how we got into a decent amount of universities and schools. And
so that initial foray into businesses, what happens with revenue when you're starting to do that? Take us through that now.
Yeah. So I wish I could say that it was smooth sailing, but it definitely wasn't. Our subscription boxes were like fizzling out, and business to business sales weren't really catching up as quickly as I had wanted them to. And I didn't really figure out the models for business to business sales until I actually hired Anne, who's our director of sales. I hired her in October of 2017. So now she's been with us, what is that, like 6-7 months.
And what did she do differently to kind of turn it around?
She had a second set of eyes, honestly. And she comes from a background of sales, and I don't really know anything about sales. And a lot of my sales were like, my friends, like I could talk to my friends and be like, oh, this is only $13 a month, but now I have to convince people to support me like $1,000 and like $10,000. And like, I don't know, yes, I was okay with talking about money, but making these big asks were not typically in my wheelhouse. So I didn't feel as comfortable doing it. And so Anne came in and she really helped look at our customers, understand a sales strategy, figure out who we were going to pinpoint, what our actual offering was. Like at this point, I was just like slinging tampons and pads. Like a customer would come to us and they would be like, and I'd be like, so what do you want? And they were like, this, that. And I was standing here like breaking down boxes and like counting out tampons and pads to ship them exactly what they wanted. Of course, that's not scalable. I needed to create cartons and all the things. So Anne really helped streamline like what we were actually selling.
And is that now an outbound strategy?
Outbound as in like Anne's reaching out or we're reaching out?
Yeah. Was that like at this point you kind of exhausted your network? When Anne came in, did you start to say, hey, these are some other companies? And did it turn more into a proactive outbound strategy at that point?
Yes. But of course, like I would say we're still playing around with it. We did start reaching out to companies to have them stock their bathrooms with tampons and pads. And a lot of them were local businesses, people that had heard about us, had been reading about us in the news, but have never been pitched. And so Anne created like a list of 100 businesses in Columbus that we needed to connect to. And she would call them, email them, knock on their doors, and like convince them that they needed to offer free tampons and pads in their businesses, and they could do it for just $250. That's what the starting cost was. And so we created that package for them that was, I think I read something somewhere that $250 is like a nice, like get in the door kind of amount for like a medium to small business. And that's what we started out with.
And so what was the pitch? So Anne would call, if you just take me through this, she'd created a list of accounts and she would call and email. And do you kind of know what the pitch was?
It's so funny because Anne is sitting right across from me and I'm smiling and I'm like, I wish I knew more about what you did.
Well, get her out. Get her. Maybe she wants to. Can she tell us what the pitch was?
Yeah.
And can you tell? And we're trying to figure out when those early days. This is what goes on here. There's Anne coming into. There she is, right there. You guys are getting 2 for 1 here. And we're talking about the early days when you first came on. It sounds like, if I understood Claire correctly, there was a list of accounts you were trying to get into. Tell us a little bit about how you penetrated those accounts and how you kind of got those initial sales when you came in.
Definitely.
And if you could move a little bit to your left.
Sure.
There you go. Perfect. That's perfect.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think it was a variety of things. For anyone that I didn't have a connection to, I spent time and energy just cold emailing them. And a lot of them were just subject lines like quick question or a question about your facilities or, hey, I was in your restaurant, just something to grab the attention of the GM or whomever it was. And oftentimes the email was just like, hey, so-and-so, if I knew the name, or, hey, or howdy. And then really just saying like, do you offer tampons and pads in your bathrooms to employees and guests? And that elicited either absolutely no response, or it elicited an interesting, some kind of response that I could take from there. I also had experience prior to starting at AntFlow. I sold craft beer in the Columbus market. So I had a lot of restaurants and people who I knew, some of which were in the same brick and mortar that I had left them at from that job, some who had transitioned and I had in my social media network. And
were you using the phone? Were you using the phone as well, or is it mostly email?
It was a lot of email, and then some of those people I really did just go show up at the restaurant, because that's what I used to do for beer too. I mean, you just show up, and I mean, I had customers in the past that they didn't order unless you showed up and sat down and talked to them that day every week. So
this is great advice for everyone selling to local markets. You don't have to hide behind a phone or email. Sometimes you have to walk into the place and do it face to face.
Yep, definitely. And my first selling experience was house painting. I knocked on doors, and that started in February in Ohio. So it was sleeting or snowing sideways, and people feel bad for you, especially when you knock on their door when it's really inclement weather, genuinely. So that's a little tip. If it's raining or snowing, people take pity on you and tend to buy from you more.
Awesome. That's awesome. So tell me where it is today now. So now you've been doing this. Anne's come in. We're business to business. Tell us where we are today.
Yeah. Wow. So where are we today? excited to report that we are in over 100 companies across the United States.
Wow.
So that ranges from, Stanford University, Columbus State Community College, middle schools, high schools, Twitter, Viacom, L Brands, Kellogg's, small coffee shops like Stoff's Coffee in Columbus to Charles Penzone Salon. So it really ranges in terms of our customers.
Yeah.
But I will admit, when talking with investors and people that are actually analyzing our business, they're like, wow, you're scattered and you don't have any focus. Because we literally are servicing every market, and you're looking at the team right now.
Yeah.
OnFlow services 100 customers, and we're it.
But are you strategic in those customers? Is that an account list that you're creating, or?
Somewhat. I mean, we do get a lot of inbound, and I think we get influx of inbound specifically when we have press releases or articles written about Claire, or if she speaks at an event locally or goes to a conference. We'll get an influx of inbound sales from either connections or people who have seen her. But we service everything.
What's the biggest, now that you've gone to, you're in all these companies, what's the biggest challenge now?
I think there are a lot of challenges. And one of the things that we're actually, Josh Braun listeners, exclusive. So we are rolling out a free vend menstrual product dispenser. And what this means, our current solution, so when businesses purchase product from us, whether it be a middle school to corporation, they get a display box, like a white acrylic display box that they can send on a counter or put on a wall. The problem with this display box, if you're stocking a school, is that people can literally take up an entire handful and put it in their backpack. Now, not every school has this problem. Some of them do, some of them don't. But we are creating a dispenser that will deter people from stealing an entire or taking an entire handful. But it'll be a lot like a paper towel dispenser where you can take as much as you need, but it deters you from stealing the entire thing.
Yes.
So what's great about this dispenser is it helps business. One of the biggest pieces of pushback that we get is people are just going to steal it, therefore we don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're going to abuse the product, therefore we don't want it. So we're able to actually have a response to that objection. But then in addition to that, we're actually adding IoT to this dispenser to allow us to track how many products this company is using. So for that, there's a variety of reasons that that's beneficial. First, we can help them project how much inventory they're going to go through. We're able to project how much inventory we're going to go through. And then in addition to that, we know that if they ordered 500 tampons and they've gone through 400, we can automatically send them their next batch of tampons and pads. So it alleviates operations and facilities burden of contacting us, reordering, yada, yada. And then they don't ever have to overnight it, and it's really seamless. So that's our most recent development, because we have experienced some customers unintentionally churning just because they forgot to order.
And so that's once they've ordered. What's the biggest objection you have when you actually prospect and you talk to people? What do businesses say when they say no?
It's usually either, honestly, most people say no because they feel that their people, whether that's an employee or their customer base, they feel that they won't use them, which is really interesting because if I start my period unexpectedly and I don't have the products I need, I am going to need a tampon or pad. There is no other option that will be out the door and moving on my way the way that a tampon or pad will. Toilet paper, paper towel just isn't going to cut it. So it's really interesting when they say that. And also the theft. They're worried that people will abuse them, or I don't know why people think that kids will peel off the pad wrapper and stick pads to the wall. I guess that occurs, but that
it hasn't happened with us. It
hasn't happened yet.
Not our pads.
The craziest theft story that I have is a woman in a coffee shop and bakery. She said that a mom brought her 7-year-old son back because he took a handful of the non-applicator tampons because he thought they were Nerf gun pellets. So at least that was a fun story, and he didn't genuinely think to steal them, other than he thought they were a toy.
Totally get it. I do have one more question for you guys, and that is, one cannot help but hear your enthusiasm and your passion in what you do. How important is that when starting a company and selling?
So for me, I think it's critical. If I'm being very honest, I still pay myself $2,000 a month. And that's partially because I live in Ohio, so I can do that. Partially because I didn't go to college, so I don't have any college debt, so I can do that. But I mean, it's not like a hefty, CEO salary. But the reason that I keep my salary low is I know that I'm building a company that is literally changing the world. We're changing legislation. We're changing people's daily lives. We get tweets at us and messages from us that like people's employees like feel better, or like Aunt Flo saved them for a date or something. Like those messages, like whenever I feel down or like we don't hit sales or something silly, like I, mess up like a $15,000 order, has happened this year. Like that, those are like the sentiments that I reflect on to make sure that I keep going.
And what about you, Ann, on the sales side, the sort of debilitating feeling of rejection? What kind of keeps you going there?
So real.
I'm used to no. I knocked on doors. So no doesn't really faze me, honestly. I've had people wave at me through their glass door and not get up to answer it. So yeah, I mean, I think in terms of sales, I have never stayed in a sales job that made me feel gross or yucky. A lot of times salespeople get a bad rep. And that's, I think, because they're selling something that they don't see value in. And so when you're selling something, I mean, if I was selling a broken car on a lemon lot, I should feel gross because I'm selling someone something that isn't what I'm telling them that it is. And so with Aunt Flo, I'm selling something that's valuable that I personally can relate to. My background, I did go to Ohio State and I have a Bachelor of Arts in Sexuality Studies, and I primarily chose that major because I'm not a school person and I wanted something interesting enough to get me through the last 2 years of school. And I like having tough conversations. So sexuality studies is the perfect outlet for me. But I think just with sales, it's selling something that you believe in and that you see value in.
And I think that is contagious. I know it has been for me. I, as you can see on this podcast, am a Flo bro and a huge supporter. And Claire, you guys have been amazing. Claire, if people want to find out more, how do they do that?
Yeah. So you can find us, it's just goantflow.com, FLOW.com. And then all of our social media handles are at goantflow. And of course, if you want to stock your business bathroom or you have a school that you think should stock it, like you might have been, I don't even think we talked about cost, but it's literally $5 to $7 per female employee per year. So this is not like, when you're thinking about employee benefits, this is like amazing. And you're actually making an impact on your employees and making your female employees feel cared for and supported. So yeah, you can get our stuff online just at goantflow.com.
And Claire, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. You guys are awesome.
Yay! You're amazing.